Arts in the Philippines refer to the various forms of arts that have developed and accumulated in the Philippines from the beginning of the civilization in the country up to the present era. They reflect the range of artistic influences on the country's culture, including indigenous forms of arts and how these influences have honed the country's arts. The development of Philippine art comes in three major traditions. These are ethnic tradition, Spanish colonial tradition, and American colonial and contemporary tradition. Now let's first talk about ethnic traditions. The Philippine ethnic art forms are primarily influenced by the geographical location and the experiences of the Filipinos. The dances in the country during the pre colonial times vary depending on the area where our ancestors thrived. It was divided into two: Highlands dances and near the sea dances. Highland dances are the imitation of animal movements, while near the sea dances are the mimics of the movements of the fish. Before the colonization, Philippines already has its indigenous arts. Visual arts, pottery, weaving, wood carving, and metal crafting were dominant during the pre-colonial period. So what about the architecture during the pre-colonial period? The earliest records of pre-colonial architecture in the Philippines are rock shelters and caves in Palawan. Early Filipinos are nomadic, since they are constantly in search for food through hunting or fishing, so they mainly rely on nature when creating shelter and do not need to build permanent structures. Their houses were built using natural materials like kogon, anahaw, bamboo, and rattan. Our ancestors already have their folk literature, which came in forms of folk speeches, songs, and narratives. This folk literature verbalized their experiences. Do our ancestors have musical and theatrical arts? Well, tribal presentation and rituals were early theatrical performances depicting their beliefs. They also have indigenous musical instruments like bamboo flutes and bass gongs. Now let's talk about the influence of Spanish colonization in the Philippines on our history of arts. When the Spaniards arrived in the Philippines in 1521, the colonizers used art as a tool to propagate the Catholic faith through beautiful images. The Spaniards tend to replace the Philippine indigenous arts with Western art forms. Religion and secularization greatly influenced the arts in the Philippines. During the Spanish colonial times, friars were the ones supervising the practice of arts in the country, with their agenda of propagating Christianity and maintaining the power of the colonizers. During the Spanish colonization, literary works could be classified into religious and secular prose and poetry. In choreography, religious dances commonly performed to venerate patrons and saints. Secular dances like valse, fandango, polka, and minuet are just some dances performed in social functions. Spanish also introduced piano and Western instruments to the Philippine arts. Band and orchestra multiplied as the zarzuelas and operas became prevalent. The paintings and sculptures during the Spanish colonial tradition mostly depicted religious subject matters, while in architecture, stones and bricks were used in constructing buildings like churches, houses, and government offices. Exterior and interior of the buildings were embellished with wood carvings or metal works with intricate decorative designs. Now, how about the influence of American colonization and contemporary tradition to the Philippine arts? But before that, let's first differentiate the difference between modern art and contemporary art. So, modern art refers to the practice of art in the 1860s up to 1960s. Modern art continuously develops even after the World War II, which led to the contemporary way of art making today. While contemporary art refers to the recent and current practice of art ranging from 1970s up to the present. It mirrors the society and culture of the present times. It uses a combination of different methods, materials, and ideas that transcend the traditional way of art making. All Philippine art forms had a different twist as the American way of life became a part of lives of the Filipinos. Artists experimented with different materials and methodologies and produced non-conventional artworks with a wide range of themes. Some of the examples of these arts are Buen Cabuyan's Bundok Banahaw, Elmer Borlogan's Quiapo,